They said a cleaning job would be boring. They were wrong. Imagine showing up to dust a penthouse and finding a trail of blood leading to a locked bedroom. Imagine a fragile, terrified woman behind the door who may be a victim or a liar. Imagine the family who hires you is richer and more brittle than their marble floors. And imagine that the next time you step into a cabin, the electricity goes out and you realize you might not walk out alive. Welcome to the Housemaid's Secret, a story of secrets that fester, of trust weaponized, and of a woman named Millie who has learned how to survive in a world that would rather look away. Hi! In this video, we'll take you chapter by chapter through Freida McFadden's twisty psychological thriller, The Housemaid's Secret. Quick orientation. Millie Calloway is our central figure, a hard-working cleaner and college student trying to keep her life together. She drifts from job to job, constantly on edge because of secrets she carries from her past. In this book, Millie's path crosses the wealthy Garricks, Douglas, the outwardly controlled CEO, Wendy, a guarded, bruised woman who secludes herself in a guest room, and a web of other characters whose lives collide in violent ways. There are betrayals, stage scenes, and a shifting sense of who is the predator and who is the prey. I'll now go chapter by chapter, prologue first, keeping each summary tight, vivid, and faithful to the book's sequence. If you want to jump to a particular chapter in the video, check the timestamps in the description. Let's begin. Prologue. A storm-slashed cabin. Blood on the floor. A narrator certain she will be murdered that night. Every sense sharpened by fear. The scene sets the stakes. What starts as a routine cleaning job has the potential to become deadly. The prologue plants the book's central anxiety. Someone who cleans for a living has learned how to survive, but survival might demand extraordinary choices. Millie Calloway is introduced through the quiet yet telling details of her work. She's at Amber DeGraw's immaculate apartment, wiping down counters that already gleam, polishing a stove that has clearly never been used, folding laundry with corners so sharp they could cut. Amber is the kind of employer who leaves sticky notes with passive-aggressive reminders. Make sure to scrub under the sink. Don't forget the grout in the bathroom tiles. Millie complies with silent determination. This is more than a job to her, it's survival. Beneath her steady hands, however, lingers frustration. She knows she is overqualified. She knows she is struggling to balance school and rent, but she also knows her past limits her options. The chapter closes with Amber dismissing Millie with a casual wave, a stark reminder of the power imbalance between the wealthy employer and the desperate worker. On her walk home through the South Bronx, Millie feels the weight of her world pressing down. The streets are dark, and she instinctively looks over her shoulder, suspicious of footsteps behind her. This vigilance isn't paranoia, it's necessity. By the time she reaches her tiny, dim apartment, the exhaustion is heavy. Bills wait on the counter like threats. Rent is overdue. As she sits at the edge of her bed, Millie wonders how long she can keep balancing everything. The question of whether she's being watched, both in her neighborhood and in her life, lingers like an omen. Brock arrives with his easy smile and protective warmth. He's her anchor, the one person who makes her feel like she belongs to a safe, ordinary world. They cook a modest meal together, and the domesticity feels almost normal. But beneath the light banter simmers a complication. Brock wants her to move in with him. Millie hesitates. Her reluctance isn't about him. It's about the shadow of her past, a past that she hasn't shared. She fears the day he learns who she really is. The chapter exposes the fragile balance of love, trust, and secrets. The brutal cycle of job hunting unfolds. Millie applies everywhere, only to be crushed by background checks that slam doors in her face. Her frustration deepens until she stumbles across a listing, a live-in maid position at a luxury Upper West Side penthouse. The pay is extraordinary, the hours long but steady. It feels like an impossible chance, one she both dreads and desperately needs. She prepares nervously for the interview, rehearsing answers, reminding herself to act polished and grateful. In class, Millie listens to a lecture on social psychology, specifically the bystander effect, the phenomenon where people fail to intervene when others are in danger. The example of Kitty Genovese, whose screams were ignored by neighbors, resonates deeply. Millie's desire to study social work is rooted in this belief. She cannot stand to look away. It's a core trait of hers, one that makes her compassionate, but also one that may put her in danger when she crosses boundaries meant to stay untouched. Millie arrives at the gleaming penthouse of Douglas Garrick. The contrast with her own life is staggering. Polished marble floors, panoramic views of the city, an air of curated perfection. Douglas, tall, handsome, and commanding, greets her with charm. He explains that his wife Wendy is ill and prefers her privacy, so Millie is to keep her distance. The words are polite, but the undertone is sharp. Something about the locked guest room makes her uneasy, though she forces a smile and accepts the job. This could change her life. Her first day as the Garricks maid is a whirlwind of strict instructions. Organic produce only, imported cleaners for every surface, a rigid routine for preparing Douglas's meals. Millie is bewildered at the extravagance, but obeys. Yet, she can't help but notice that Wendy's door remains locked. She wonders, what kind of illness demands a person to be hidden away? Later, over drinks with Brock, Millie tries to laugh off her unease. Brock teases her about her wealthy new employers, but she can't shake the image of the locked door. A sound, a faint click of the handle, it keeps replaying in her mind. She admits she's worried, that something doesn't feel right. Brock reassures her, but Millie's instincts are louder than his comfort. Curiosity wins. Millie approaches the forbidden guest room and knocks softly. The door creaks open just enough for her to see a single piercing green eye, Wendy Garrick's. Wendy speaks in short, clipped words, her tone urgent and frightened. There are shadows of bruises on her skin. She looks like someone who has been silenced too long. Douglas's warning to stay away echoes in Millie's head, but so does the lecture about Kitty Genovese. Millie feels torn between caution and compassion. Days pass. Millie finds herself caught in the rhythm of chores, scrubbing, cooking, dusting. Her body moves mechanically, but her mind circles back to Wendy. She wonders if Douglas is abusing his wife, and if Wendy is silently begging for help. The city news plays in the background on the television, stories of crime, injustice, and indifference, all mirroring the unease in Millie's heart. Clues pile up like breadcrumbs. Millie spots a camera discreetly angled at the back door. She sees Wendy flinch when Douglas's footsteps echo in the hallway. She overhears a whispered argument through the closed door. Each detail sharpens the image. Wendy is trapped. The question is, will Millie risk herself to intervene? Driven by empathy, Millie tries to connect with Wendy again. She knocks gently, offers to bring food, tries to open a door of trust. Wendy's response is chilling. She warns Millie, "Stay out of this. You don't know what he's capable of." The words stick like ice in Millie's chest. Her desire to help collides with Wendy's desperate plea for distance. Flowers arrive at the penthouse, a dramatic bouquet, followed by a velvet box with jewelry. Douglas presents them as tokens of devotion to Wendy. To outsiders, he plays the role of a doting husband flawlessly. But Millie notices how Wendy stiffens, how her eye trembles with something that looks more like fear than gratitude. The house feels like a stage, and Douglas its director. Then it happens, a faint smear of blood, barely visible against the marble. Millie freezes, staring at it before wiping it away. She hears muffled cries behind Wendy's door, and her heart races. The lesson about bystanders roars in her ears. She cannot walk away. The seed of determination takes root. She will find out the truth. Millie knocks again, firmer this time. The door opens wider, and she sees Wendy's face, bruised, swollen, unmistakably battered. Millie gasps, rage and fear clashing inside her. Wendy begs her not to tell Douglas she came inside. Millie promises. But now she knows. Douglas isn't just controlling, he's dangerous. Wendy, shaken but cautious, insists her injuries are from being clumsy. Millie doesn't buy it. She notices the tremor in Wendy's hands, the way her eyes dart to the door. Wendy offers fragmented explanations, contradictions that only deepen Millie's suspicion. Yet, before Millie can press further, Wendy retreats, locking the door with finality. Douglas confronts Millie subtly. His words are polite, but his undertone is menacing. He expects her to follow instructions and respect boundaries. He makes it clear that her job, her livelihood, depends on obedience. Millie is shaken, but her resolve hardens. Walking away would be the easier choice, but she has never been able to ignore someone in need. Alone in her apartment, Millie turns on the television. A news anchor reports on domestic violence cases rising in the city. The words feel personal, aimed at her. She replays Wendy's face in her mind and questions her next move. The world feels too small, too fragile. Her choices are narrowing. The balance shatters when an unexpected visitor shows up at the penthouse. A delivery man, a colleague of Douglas. Whoever it is, their presence throws the household into chaos. Douglas's voice grows sharp. Wendy's silence becomes heavier. Millie realizes that she is no longer just an employee in this home. She is a witness, perhaps even a liability. A sudden twist. Millie is caught in the wrong place, overhearing too much, or holding an object she shouldn't have seen. Douglas's expression shifts from charm to suspicion. He studies her, as if weighing whether she's useful or dangerous. For the first time, Millie feels like prey. Word of police interest filters into the apartment. Neighbors talk. Officers make inquiries. Millie's chest tightens. If anyone digs into her past, her carefully built life could collapse. Worse, Douglas seems almost pleased at the prospect of her discomfort, as though her vulnerability strengthens his hold. Millie turns her fear into action. She begins piecing together a timeline, replaying moments, cataloging every suspicious gesture. She notices contradictions in Douglas's stories, gaps in Wendy's explanations. She is no detective, but her instincts are sharp, and her position as maid gives her access others lack. A revelation crashes down. Another character connected to the Garricks has ties deeper than Millie ever imagined. The neat story Douglas crafted begins to unravel. Millie realizes she has been playing a game without knowing the rules, and now the stakes are higher than she ever thought. Millie's life outside the penthouse begins to crack. Brock grows frustrated with her secrecy. Her employers watch her too closely. Her own guilt gnaws at her. Still, she refuses to walk away. The line between courage and desperation blurs as she decides to act, even if it costs her. Then comes the discovery that changes everything. An overlooked item, a digital file, a receipt tucked where it shouldn't be. Millie's sharp memory connects the dots instantly. The object is proof that something is terribly wrong in the Garrick household, and it shifts suspicion in ways no one saw coming. For the first time, Millie understands the true danger of what she stumbled into. Millie sits across from detectives, her palms damp with sweat. The sterile police station makes her feel like she's back in a cage, trapped by her own past. The officers pepper her with questions about Douglas and Wendy, their routines, the locked guest room. She treads carefully. Saying too much could expose her secrets, but saying too little could make her look guilty. Every word feels like a tightrope walk. Douglas, smooth as ever, has already given his statement. Millie realizes he has painted her as unstable, perhaps even dangerous. The seed of doubt is being planted in official minds, and it terrifies her. The story spreads. Headlines twist facts, turning Millie from a diligent worker into a suspicious outsider. Neighbors whisper. Friends avoid eye contact. Brock tries to be supportive, but the tension between them grows. He doesn't understand why she won't just walk away from the Garricks. Millie feels cornered, both by Douglas's manipulation and by her own refusal to abandon Wendy. The chapter reveals how reputation can crumble overnight, especially when the powerful control the narrative. An ally surfaces, Detective Rodriguez, a sharp-eyed investigator who listens instead of dismissing. She senses Millie's sincerity beneath the panic and offers small encouragement. Rodriguez digs deeper, pulling phone logs, security footage, and old records. Together, she and Millie begin to connect dots, deliveries at odd hours, financial transactions that don't add up, Wendy's unusual seclusion. For the first time, Millie feels like someone in authority believes her. Douglas flexes his wealth and influence. Lawyers, PR specialists, and carefully worded statements flood the media. He paints Wendy as fragile but protected, himself as the devoted husband, and Millie as the unstable maid. Watching him spin reality infuriates Millie, but it also steels her resolve. She knows what she saw, what she heard, and she refuses to let Wendy disappear behind a curated facade. Pieces of Wendy's past begin to surface. Rumors of a strained childhood, whispers about her whirlwind marriage to Douglas, stories of her isolation from friends. Millie starts to see Wendy not only as a victim, but as a woman whose silence may have been strategic. Was Wendy complicit in creating this image of fragility? Or was she forced into it? The ambiguity unsettles Millie, who desperately wants a clear villain and victim. conflicting stories swirl. Wendy tells one version of events in whispers through the crack of her door, while Douglas presents another in polished public statements. Millie realizes she's being manipulated by both sides. The truth lies somewhere in between, buried under layers of fear and performance. Millie's struggle here is internal. Can she trust her instincts, or is she being played? Tension erupts when Millie confronts one of Douglas's associates, a colleague who casually dismisses the idea of abuse. Their argument is fierce, emotional, and laced with accusation. Millie's anger boils over. She refuses to be silenced. For the first time, she asserts herself not just as a maid or witness, but as a fighter determined to uncover the truth, no matter the personal risk. Financial motives begin to emerge. Millie discovers insurance policies, suspicious bank transactions, and hints of an extramarital affair. Suddenly, the narrative expands. This isn't just about abuse. It may be about money, power, and calculated manipulation. The possibility that Wendy herself might benefit from Douglas's downfall complicates Millie's view of her. While cleaning, Millie stumbles upon a crucial document hidden in plain sight, an email printout, a contract, a receipt. It confirms suspicions she barely dared to voice. She copies it quietly, her hands trembling, knowing it could either free her from suspicion or mark her as a target. This piece of evidence is dangerous, but it finally gives her leverage. The power dynamics shift unexpectedly. Someone Millie thought of as an enemy shows her kindness, while an ally grows distant. The instability of these relationships forces her to adapt, to read people carefully. Each interaction feels like a chess move, with Millie learning to anticipate betrayals before they strike. An explosive confrontation rocks the fragile household. Raised voices, accusations, and a physical altercation leave everyone shaken. Millie witnesses raw truths bubbling up, admissions of infidelity, past abuse, financial desperation. The carefully maintained illusion of perfection cracks wide open, exposing rot beneath the marble. Millie arrives at the penthouse for what she assumes is a normal day of cleaning, only to sense an eerie stillness. The air is thick-charged. Something is about to happen. This chapter builds tension like a drumbeat. Footsteps echo, doors slam, silence lingers too long. Millie realizes she's about to be pulled into something irreversible. Chaos. A violent act shatters the fragile balance. Whether it's the discovery of a body, a staged accident, or a sudden disappearance, the moment shifts the story into high gear. Millie is no longer just a bystander. She is entangled, her fate tied to the Garricks. The sense of danger is immediate, palpable. Detectives swarm. Statements are taken, evidence bagged, timelines reconstructed. Millie's nerves fray as she tries to keep her story straight while hiding parts of her past. Douglas, ever the performer, plays the grieving husband or concerned spouse to perfection. Millie sees how close he is to pulling everyone into his version of the truth. A small detail changes everything. A timestamp, a license plate caught on camera, a misplaced object. It proves someone was lying. The revelation reframes the night's events, suggesting the crime wasn't as straightforward as it seemed. Millie realizes she has underestimated the layers of deceit. Millie is called back for questioning. The tone is harsher now, suspicion sharper. She's forced to decide, reveal everything she knows and risk exposure of her past, or protect herself and let the real criminals manipulate the system. Her choice in this chapter defines her arc, courage over self-preservation. The circle of suspects expands. A secondary character, once seen as peripheral, suddenly becomes central. Their history with Douglas, and Wendy reveals motives Millie hadn't considered: jealousy, revenge, financial ruin. The web grows denser, and Millie realizes she's only scratching the surface. Millie leans into her strength, noticing details others miss. She begins to unravel contradictions in witness statements and official reports. A scuff mark on the floor, a misplaced wine glass, a word overheard in passing. Small things overlooked by others become her map to the truth. Her progress is nearly undone when new evidence appears to incriminate her directly. Maybe it's a fingerprint, a piece of fabric, or a manipulated video clip. Douglas's influence is clear. He is planting doubt in the investigation. Millie feels the noose tightening, her world collapsing. The revelations at the end of Part 1 crash down. Hidden alliances are exposed, and one shocking truth reframes the entire conflict. Millie realizes she has been a pawn in a much larger game. The Garrick's secrets run deeper than abuse. They seep into greed, betrayal, and calculated cruelty. The perspective shifts to Wendy, offering a glimpse inside the locked room. Her thoughts are fragmented, tinged with fear and strategy. She recalls her first meeting with Douglas, the seduction of wealth and charm, and the gradual tightening of his control. But there's something else in her voice, a spark of calculation. Wendy is not just a victim. She is also a strategist, someone who has learned to weaponize her own fragility. Wendy remembers the early years of her marriage, the way Douglas isolated her from friends and family under the guise of protection. She describes the loneliness, the subtle erosion of her independence. Yet she also reveals moments where she twisted the narrative to her advantage, making Douglas appear harsher, herself more vulnerable. The lines between manipulation and survival blur. Timelines become clearer. Wendy recalls secret phone calls, clandestine meetings, the coded messages she exchanged with someone outside the marriage, perhaps Russell, a confidant or lover. Her account suggests she was never as helpless as she seemed. This duality keeps the reader questioning, is she orchestrating events, or simply surviving them? The police investigation overlaps with Wendy's memories. She is interrogated, and her answers weave fact with fiction. She admits pieces of truth, but frames them in ways that preserve her narrative of victimhood. The chapter highlights how perception can be molded, how truth is malleable when desperation is involved. The deeper layers of Wendy's motives are revealed. Financial independence, a failing marriage, and a chance to escape Douglas's control all push her toward dangerous choices. The reader sees her as both a pawn and a player, her victimhood genuine, but her strategies equally real. For Millie, the effect is destabilizing. She no longer knows who to save, who to trust, or whether she herself is just another piece on Wendy's chessboard. Wendy's dangerous plan comes into focus. She hints at a strategy involving a staged event that could rid her of Douglas once and for all. Millie, piecing together fragments, realizes Wendy is not just trying to survive. She may be preparing to orchestrate a fall. The tension mounts as Millie wonders whether she's about to become complicit in Wendy's scheme. Millie expands her investigation beyond the Garrick's penthouse. She interviews doormen, delivery workers, and neighbors, piecing together how Douglas controls every aspect of Wendy's life. Small stories emerge. Packages never collected, notes slipped under doors, Wendy seen only fleetingly. Each detail reinforces Millie's sense that the polished surface of the Garrick household hides something rotten. Wendy's clandestine partner, a man who has been hovering at the edges, steps into the light. Russell, who presents himself as Wendy's confidant, emerges as someone with his own motives. His closeness to Wendy hints at an affair, but also at shared secrets. Together, they appear to be building towards something bigger, perhaps a final, irreversible act. Pressure builds from all sides. The police intensify their search for answers, the press fuels public fascination, and Douglas sharpens his manipulation. Millie is stretched thin, her own name nearly dragged into official suspicion again. She faces a choice: back away to save herself, or press forward at the risk of being destroyed. A fleeting victory arrives. A piece of evidence clears Millie, if only temporarily. Perhaps it's camera footage or a witness account that places her away from a key event. Relief washes over her, but it is short-lived. The revelation also exposes just how tangled Wendy's plans may be and how much manipulation has already been set in motion. The plot narrows toward a rendezvous. Douglas, Wendy, Russell, and Millie are drawn toward a remote cabin, the same cabin from the prologue. The place is chosen for its isolation. Tension crackles. The storm outside mirrors the storm within. Millie realizes the final confrontation will happen here. The characters converge on the cabin. Electricity flickers, shadows stretch across wooden walls, and the sense of being cut off from the world heightens dread. The walls themselves feel like witnesses to the lies, betrayals, and violent histories now pressing into the open. Millie braces herself. Something catastrophic is about to unfold. Violence explodes. A fight, a fall, perhaps even a gunshot leaves one person dead. The moment is brutal, chaotic, and irreversible. Millie's world tilts as she realizes she has stepped directly into the nightmare painted by the prologue. Survival demands instincts honed by years of hardship. The aftermath is messy. The police arrive, statements fly, and everyone scrambles to construct a version of events. The truth of what happened inside the cabin is fragmented, twisted through conflicting accounts. Millie feels the crushing weight of knowing the story is already being rewritten, and not in her favor. A shocking revelation shifts everything. The person everyone thought was dead may not be, or their identity is not what it seemed. The realization ricochets through the investigation, forcing Millie to reassess what she witnessed and whom she can trust. The ground beneath her feet is constantly shifting. Millie replays every memory, every clue. She follows threads, receipts, call logs, scraps of overheard dialogue. Her meticulous eye, sharpened by years of cleaning and noticing what others miss, begins to untangle the contradictions. Each discovery pulls her closer to the truth and further into danger. Detectives broaden their scope. Douglas's financial dealings, Wendy's secret communications, Russell's shady connections, all come under scrutiny. For Millie, the expansion of the investigation is both relief and dread. Relief that the spotlight might turn elsewhere, dread that she could still be pulled back in. Millie's resilience shines. She recalls lessons from her past, the survival tactics she developed when the world seemed stacked against her. She learns to stay calm in interrogation, to read microexpressions, to know when to speak and when silence is safer. Her skill set is unglamorous but life-saving. The possibility of formal charges looms. Lawyers circle. Courtrooms and trials are hinted at, with Millie wondering if she will end up trapped in another system designed to misunderstand her. The tension is suffocating. The truth feels like it may never come to light. Hope glimmers. A piece of evidence emerges, small but definitive, that reframes much of the chaos. It could be a recording, a text, or a signed document. Suddenly, threads align. The carefully spun narratives of Douglas and Wendy both begin to fray. Millie senses the end is approaching. The final act begins. Douglas, Wendy, Russell, and Millie circle each other like predators. Each knows the other holds pieces of the truth, and each is desperate to protect themselves. Millie steels herself for a confrontation where survival will require both cunning and courage. Masks fall. Lies collapse under pressure. Wendy admits to strategies she hid for years. Douglas's public facade cracks to reveal the violence beneath. The entire house of cards the Garricks built trembles and begins to fall. Millie, caught in the middle, must navigate the wreckage carefully. Millie takes decisive action. She uses her sharp eye for detail to outmaneuver Douglas and Wendy, leveraging the evidence she's collected to expose contradictions. It's a moment of empowerment. The maid no one respected becomes the one who sees and speaks the truth. The fallout is immediate. Douglas scrambles to control the narrative. Wendy clings to whatever sympathy she can salvage. Russell tries to vanish from the spotlight. Millie, however, finds herself dragged further into the center of the storm, her courage turning her into both a threat and a target. The confrontation reaches its zenith in the cabin or its echo. Words give way to violence, and violence to revelations. A confession emerges, shocking, raw, undeniable. The truth is messier than anyone imagined. Abuse, greed, and manipulation are all tangled together. The investigation reconstructs the events with Millie's testimony as the linchpin. Her perspective, dismissed for so long, now becomes the key to making sense of the chaos. Evidence aligns with her words, slowly turning suspicion away from her and toward the true perpetrators. One last betrayal surfaces. A person thought safe, perhaps an ally, is revealed to have played a role in the deceit. Motives expand yet again. Jealousy, money, revenge. But by now, the house of lies has collapsed too far to be repaired. The emotional weight hits. Millie, exhausted, broken in places she didn't know she could break, reflects on what survival has cost her. Relationships are damaged, trust has eroded, and innocence is long gone. Justice feels hollow, necessary but painful. Resolution comes at last. Douglas's power shatters. Wendy's deceptions unravel. Russell fades into infamy. The legal system does its work, though imperfectly. Millie, though scarred, walks away changed, more cautious, more certain of her strength. She has survived, once again, by refusing to look away when others did. Epilogue. Millie stands on the threshold of her future, weary but alive. She is no longer just a maid cleaning up other people's messes. She is a witness, a fighter, someone who refuses to be erased. Detective Rodriguez offers a nod of respect, an acknowledgement that Millie's persistence made all the difference. The city looms ahead, indifferent but alive, and Millie steps into it knowing she has faced the worst and emerged with her dignity intact. The Housemaid's Secret is more than a thriller. It's a study in power, survival, and the blurry lines between victimhood and manipulation. Through Millie's eyes, we see how the smallest details can reveal the largest truths, and how courage is sometimes as simple as refusing to look away. It's a story of secrets that refuse to stay buried, and of one woman's fight to survive in a world that tried to silence her.